Today I'm going to take a quick look at a new technology called SafePeak. SafePeak is a caching technology which sits between your application and your SQL Server database. It caches query results, so particularly for read-intensive applications, what that means is a lot of those read requests will be satisfied by the in-memory SafePeak cache, so they won't have to hit SQL Server at all. So the result is that the load on SQL Server will be reduced and that those read requests will be executed much faster. Comparing SafePeak to other kind of caching solutions out there, things like Memcached, the key difference with SafePeak is that you don't need to make any changes to your application. This is completely application agnostic and completely seamless to the application, so whether you're using SharePoint, Dynamics CRM, any third-party application or any custom application you've written yourself, that doesn't really matter. As long as you point the connection details through the SafePeak server, you're going to benefit from the caching. So what I've got set up here in my test environment is I've installed the SafePeak server, and if I connect to the dashboard on that server, you can see that we've got a couple of SQL Server connections defined. I just had to give it here the IP address and the port number, and then tell SafePeak which port I wanted it to listen on. And we can see we've got traffic running through this already, so we've got 77 connections, 17 transactions per second, and we're getting a cache hit rate there kind of between 80 and 90%, which means that 80 to 90% of the requests are now coming from the SafePeak in-memory cache without having to go all the way to SQL Server. So the demonstration application I'm using here is the .NET Stock Trader application from Microsoft, which is a showcase for their .NET 4 enterprise technologies. And so the way I've got this set up here is very simple. I've got some .NET components running under IIS sat on this front-end machine, and then I've got a number of databases sat within a SQL Server instance here on this machine. And so normally the flow would be that the connection goes from IIS directly to SQL Server, but the way I've reconfigured this just by making a small host file change on this server is now to route the traffic, so it goes through the SafePeak caching server, and then the SafePeak server will connect to SQL Server if required. I've also got monitoring setups here as well, so for the .NET layer I'm using AppDynamics, and for the SQL Server layer I'm using DBTuna. So to show you what that looks like, first of all in AppDynamics, this is the application, so the three .NET components here sitting on the first physical server, and then the 5 databases at the back end sitting on that second physical server. So if we look at the time series chart at the bottom, so in this period here before we applied SafePeak, we can see we're getting an average response time here somewhere around 2 seconds, and our throughput there is around 600, just over 600 calls within a 3-minute period. After this short outage here, which is where I turned on the SafePeak cache and restarted the application, what you can see now here is, picking one of these periods on average, you can see the response time of the application is now down to less than 1.5 seconds. So we've saved about half a second off the response time. And the throughput's actually increased here, so we're now doing closer to 800 requests within a 3-minute period. So what you've got here from an application level is you've got an increased throughput, and at the same time you've got a reduced response time from your application. Next, if we look at the database level, we're using DBTuna for SQL Server here, so you can see here this is the period before we applied SafePeak, where the total amount of time in SQL Server is just over 2 minutes in each 1-minute period, and we're doing about 1400 executions per minute. If you then compare that to a period here after we applied the SafePeak caching, you can see now that the time inside SQL Server is just over 1 minute now, so we've almost halved the resource consumption of SQL Server, and the execute count is down to 227 from 1400 and something previously. So that's a very short look at SafePeak. So from my initial testing there, I've seen some good results, increased throughput on the application, big reduction in load on SQL Server, and also faster response times as well. So if you're interested in taking a deeper look at SafePeak, head to the website safepeak.com and that'll tell you how to get started.